Hey guys, what is going on? Thanks so much for watching the channel. Matt Smith here, as always. Appreciate you for tuning in. Before I get going, like and subscribe and swipe right in the comments and hype me up. It's just what YouTube's doing. I have no idea what it really does, but I'm imagining it helps you in the algorithm. So please do it for me. Thanks for being here. Just wanted to reach out about where these buffs are at right now. I've had a chance to watch things over, and I know before I get rolling here, I know the last few weeks, just on my own channel, I've been doing this stuff with Brian clearly, but on my own channel, I know I've been a little bit light. My personal life in 2025. Anyway, it's just I've got a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. And life just not let me up off the mat right now, but there's some sort of lesson in it. So you just keep going. You just keep going until you figure it out. Anyway, so apologize, been a little bit lighter, but felt like with the state of the program at the moment in time, I wanted to touch base. I dug through the game, which thank God I'm back from Texas. I mean, that state, everything about it. I don't know how some of you do it who live there. What's redeeming? Well, I don't anyway. All right. Anyway, I'm moving on. Yeah, so I watched the tape and the leaving the field, what I was most curious about was okay, so how did Ryan really play? Because again, I watched this game from field level and all I thought was, man, at no point during the game did I think the offensive line truly played well enough. At no point during the game did I think they could run the ball on first down. So Ryan was constantly in third and long. And of course, when the run's not working, they just they kind of just go away from it, which again, you're starting your third string quarterback, and the reason you're starting him is because of what he did through the air in the previous game. So really, let's get this offense going. But he struggled with drive starters too, and we'll get into that as some of my takeaways. But my biggest question was, all right, well, clearly the defense is just a massive problem. Like 3 games in, I think it's obvious now they just can't stop anybody, and between the 20s, it's way too much. I mean, it's just way too much. I mean, Houston could have scored 6 field goals. They had 5. I mean, 15 points off of field goals is crazy. I mean, ideally, you have an offense that can also score and can also move the football so you can somewhat compete because at first, and in that first half, the defense really held him in there. And then the dam kind of broke because there's only so much you can do. But the truth is even, I mean, anyway, it's a struggle right now for them on that side, on both sides of the ball. But that side of the ball, which is really probably my biggest and probably our biggest surprise this year, that their defense has started as slow as it did, considering the year that they had last year and the guys that they had returning. Now, you did have some question marks, and they looked big before the season and all summer long, quite frankly, and even dating back to all the way to spring ball. And they're still huge. And now, some of these questions I don't know that you solve throughout the course of a season after watching some of this tape and having 3 games now of evidence with this team. The first thing I'll say is clearly this isn't going the way they wanted it to go. It's not how they envisioned it. And going with like a game and, just a quarter for Salter and a full game and maybe 2 quarters for Staub, more or less. It's weird because there's a lack of continuity. And yeah, okay, I mean, other teams go through this if their quarterbacks get injured, but you're typically not bringing in a guy who's a fifth-year starter who's taken a team to a New Year's Six bowl at one point in his career. You're probably not putting that guy on the bench against a Delaware team and leaving him there. So it's a unique situation in and of itself. The first thing I want to say is I think hindsight in this situation is going to be 2020. Everybody's going to have a certain take here. I do not fault Coach Prime whatsoever for going to Ryan Staub at all. I really don't. I know that there's a lot of people right now who are kind of, sticking to those guns, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I don't fault him. I think it was the right decision. I think Kaidon Salter proved that he couldn't be trusted as a passer and a runner in the first, game and change of action. And it's like, hey man, you're a fifth-year senior. But this was one of my concerns about Caden was why was there such a significant drop off his junior year compared to his sophomore year? I know that they lost some talent. Their roster got picked over in the portal and NIL. We understand how that goes. CU's been the one that's been doing the poaching here of late. But you know, there's a reason he threw for 2,800 yards sophomore year, and then was down to like 1,800 his junior year. It was like 1,000 yards rushing his sophomore year, 500 his junior year. They did play one less game because it got canceled, so you'd expect the numbers to be a little different, but it's a significant difference. Like it's really different. And so the question heading into the year is, what version of him were you getting? And at first it looked like to my eye like the 2024 version, right? I mean, clearly this guy was struggling with his accuracy, which is really, in my opinion, the reason why he got benched. And then the cherry on top was, again, it wasn't like he lost the job, but the cherry on top was the fact that you brought him in to be a dual threat guy. And right now, he hasn't proven to you that you can trust him as a dual threat, because there have been ample opportunities where he's opted to try and make a play down the field, which is admirable, but he's had green grass in front of him that, with his skill set, considering this offense and the limitations of this team this year, it's a non-negotiable that you have to get those yards on the ground. It's just, it is. And so when you combine all of that, and the fact that Ryan came in and showed an ability to stretch the ball down the field, which Caden has not at all. Like the reason that Caden looked solid in the Delaware game is because they really changed the offense to be a quick read, premeditated offense, one, two, bang. If it's not there, go. And even on some of those runs against Delaware, he wasn't sharp. Like there was one specifically where he's coming up the left sideline for a big first down in a first quarter, and there's a wide open lane, and Jordan Seaton's like yelling at him to come take advantage, because if he sees it, he's popping that for like a 60-yard touchdown. But he didn't, and he got tackled, and there's some frustrations there, right? There were. And so heading into this game, I just I saw what Coach Prime saw. I did, and I understood what he's looking for. I don't believe Kaidon Salter's like some sort of get behind me leader type of guy. I did see some interesting leadership moments from him in camp, but he's not Shedeur, right? And who took initiative in doing a lot of that stuff. His personality is not super dynamic, I don't think, and so I'm not exactly sure he's the total package of what Coach Prime is looking for in a quarterback. And I think Ryan is a guy who's been in the system. I understand why the decision was made. However, let's get into what it looked like. Okay. I thought Staub was reading the right things, right? But he's inexperienced and he's learning on the fly. And you could watch him thinking in the first quarter, because there's a lot of times where he's sticking on a read that may not be there occasionally, but he's making his way through the progressions. He's doing what the play calls for, but there are some things that, just as a playmaker, you maybe miss in the course of live fire while you're really just trying to go from one to two, from two to three, etc. So I could see some of that where an experienced quarterback just says, "Hey, I know what I'm seeing here. Let me just take this." But Staub's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to impress the coaches. He's trying to run Pat Shermer's offense. He's exactly what you're looking for. He's like a football robot. What you say, I will do, right? Whereas I think that's where, and it's obviously a much longer conversation, but where some NFL coaches feel uncomfortable with Shedeur, because he's just not that guy. He sees things that other guys don't see, and a lot of these guys just play on schedule, play on schedule, play on schedule. And you've got to be able to do that too to be a good NFL quarterback. The point here I'm making is that Staub, from a play caller's perspective, ideally is going to execute what is called if you ask that of him. However, he wasn't very sharp. That was part of the problem. He saw a lot of pressure, I thought, early, so much so that they got Larry Johnson at right tackle out of there. Now, he missed some things in the running game too, and I think he's a big guy. I just haven't really seen him use that size to his advantage, and use some strength to move somebody out of the way. Like this line is a bunch of big guys. It's okay. Like it's marginally better. And Jordan Seaton is an animal, and I can see how badly he wants to win. I I feel bad for Jordan, because to go from Shedeur to what they're dealing with right now is a huge transition. And for a guy at his talent level, he really doesn't have to be here if he doesn't want to be here. And I'm not saying that he's going to leave, but I'm just looking at how frustrated he is. And if this doesn't get a ton better by the end of the year, which I don't know how much better it's going to get, they just need to come up with a clear plan so everybody's on the same page. I think what we've seen now is that this jumping around a little bit, it's frustrating when you're not getting any results or enough results, I should say, because I think there's some there. It's just been inconsistent, and especially when you have to switch between quarterbacks, I know it's a challenge. So I think Staub's reading things the right way, like he's doing what he's supposed to. He's just not a lead at anything, right? He's not a dude. He's not a dude. He would be a very good FCS, and I think he should be a group of five guy. Like if I were Ryan, I know how much he loves it here. I just think he could have a really fun last couple of years in college as a starter somewhere for 2 years. And I don't know if there's enough there, even as like a backup plan. They're gonna address the quarterback room differently, I think, this offseason after what they've gone through this year, considering Juju still will only be 18 at the outset of next season, right? So um, anyway, he knows what Pat wants to do. Staub does. He's just not like him. He's just not. But he's a good, he's a good guy that you want to rally around. He is because he's a really good person, and the team you watch well off. I mean, they are all over him. They are really rallying to keep his confidence up. It just continually got a little bit more frustrating because the execution wasn't there, and it wasn't all just his fault. I want to be clear. Like I thought that Staub battled his ass off in the second quarter. The problem is most of it was outside of structure. A lot of it was 2 minute drill, and not a lot of it was executing exactly what the play either called for or wanted, which is important. You've got to be able to improvise and make some plays. But if that's really what he gave you when the game was in the balance, I don't know how much of an upgrade that is over Kaidon Salter or any, right? It might be a downgrade, quite frankly, because Caden probably is the better improviser. The reason why Staub got the start was you wanted him to play on schedule and be able to test a defense at least vertically. And he didn't really do that until the second half. And in the first half, the times he did try to stretch the field, he had a pass tipped to the line, which was a really good look. He read the play correctly. He had one up the sideline on a third down to Amarion Miller. He threw like 7, 8 yards out of bounds, which you just can't do. You've got to give your guy a chance there. But again, I just think from a operation standpoint, there was something when they got into the 2 minute drill, when they tried to go tempo, that he connected with. And if you're going to play him, I think you have to lean into that a little bit more. But the problem is that's kind of just asking him, to read and play schoolyard ball, which is, to a degree, Shedeur had so much control at the line, and it wasn't like Shedeur was playing schoolyard ball, but a lot of what Shedeur did was outside the structure of the play that was called because he had nearly complete autonomy, as I'm aware of, to change the play at the line, which, I mean, thank goodness he did that. I mean, look at how brilliant he was in so many of those moments, which is why you build around him and cater to his strengths and draft him early and support him. But hopefully that's going to change. Hopefully that's going to change. Anyway, I digress clearly. Here's the problem. Um, right? Like Staub's never going to be the guy. He's just further along than Juju is right now. If Juju were comfortable and not 17 and had been here for a year, like if this was a situation that they were dealing with next year, it would be very natural and make a lot of sense to turn things over to Juju. Right now, it just doesn't, and I think it will a little bit later in the season, and I'll get to that. But here's the problem with both of these guys. Neither Staub nor Salter are good enough to elevate the talent around them, which is a problem. That is a problem. And that was clearly what Shedeur did so well and what a good quarterback can do. And yes, I mean, if we're always going to compare things to Shedeur, it's going to look less than, because in my opinion, he's the best quarterback thrower of the football to have ever come through the University of Colorado. There's a reason, more than just the fact that he's the coach's son, that his name is up there. That had to be okayed by the athletic department and Rick George too. If Shedeur were no good or just an average guy, he wouldn't be up there. And right now, quite frankly, watching things in 2023, the success they had at all, that whole month of September where they carried all of sports, was because of Shedeur. Like there's a reason for that. And he threw for 500 against TCU. They come out and he eventually does enough to take care of Nebraska, again in prime time in the morning there. And then obviously the late game heroics in week 3 with all the emotions behind that. And, the whole thing is the only reason they had a chance and they didn't get killed that season was because of him. And obviously last year, what they did was because of him. So it's going to be disappointing no matter what, the way you look at it. And I did notice a moment on Well Off where Coach Prime went up to Ryan Staub to try to settle him down before the 2 minute warning, it looked like. And he said, "Okay, what do you want here?" And I could just see him having that conversation with Shedeur, where Shedeur would tell him because he trusted what Shedeur saw on the field. And look, that's what you want. That's what you need out of your quarterback as a coach, right? I mean, you're not out there. You're not looking at what the defense is presenting you. What do you want? What's your preference here? And Ryan said he didn't really have an answer for him. And he said, "Look, whatever coach calls." That is where I think Coach Prime's probably going to go away from Staub is some of that stuff because hey, last week you gave me a couple of hot routes to man coverage and checked off, and that's what I wanted. You go to Coach Shermer's office and tell him the type of stuff that you want if you're going to play. That's the assertiveness, that's the decisiveness, those are the leadership qualities. But it did feel like the moment got a little bit big for him. There's no doubt about that. And it's not that I don't think that if he were to continue with Staub, he wouldn't get better because I do. Staub's the type of guy with more reps, he will get better. The question is how much better. Like if you had to play Ryan Staub the rest of the year, I confidently think the offense would grow a little bit. I do. However, their schedule is really tough. You needed to come through these first four ready to go for conference play, considering how they start things off, and they're just not going to be there. I mean, even close, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot of areas where they probably weren't even ready for the first four. And you look back on the Georgia Tech game, and if not for those first three turnovers, I know there's a lot of people out there who are pointing, I've heard it a lot this week, who are pointing, well, Georgia Tech beat Clemson. Yeah, well, Georgia Tech should have beat the shit out of CU too if they didn't play hot potato in the first quarter. They get up by multiple touchdowns, and that game's much, much different. So I think there's a lot of people taking way too much out of that, quite frankly. As I told you after that game, like there's two likelihoods. Well, so you could make another play. Sincere Brown catches that if it's a better pass, off the second turnover. Simeon Price doesn't drop the swing pass to the end zone. That's a surefire touchdown. Like all those things are true, but the likelihood based upon both the talent of both teams, the preparedness of both teams, it was much more likely. Now, clearly, we see that Georgia Tech should have blown them out if they weren't throwing up all over themselves in the first quarter. Anyway, again, I digress. Um, so here's what I think needs to happen now. Because of the four-game gauntlet that you have coming up with BYU, TCU, Iowa State, and Utah. By the way, all those teams are undefeated right now. That's a combined 11-0 that you're going to have to face. I think you go back to Salter because I think getting through that stretch with Staub could get hairy. It could get pretty ugly because those are some pretty good football teams. Like Iowa State's not messing around. TCU's got a heck of an offense. They got an interesting test coming up. They've got SMU at home this week off of a bye, and we'll learn a lot about where they are. And I also think they might have ASU as well coming up. Anyway, so you've got a gauntlet coming up. I don't know that Staub against better defenses who are most likely going to be in an advantageous position against you if you don't get much better, if this line doesn't improve much more, if you can't get out of third and longs. Like they're having a ton of trouble right now getting into third and manageable. And when they're in third and manageable, I really haven't loved a lot of the play calling. The third down play calling, I would say, is an area they need to look at. And yes, there's been some definitely been an execution failure across the board, but certainly like there've been drops, there've been missed throws, there've been, anyway, certainly the players hold a role there. I would just say the approach on third down would be reevaluated for me. That's just my opinion. And obviously, as an offense, you want to evolve throughout the season. And for Coach Shermer, there's a lot of people who are just blatantly placing the blame there. And I think that there is definitely an element to this offense that could be much better that isn't right now. Like there definitely needs to be a little bit more creativity involved. They at the tight end position, Zach Adkins is having such a hard time blocking right now that the 11 personnel stuff they're doing with him in line isn't leading to much success, which is an area where I think they need to pull a receiver off the field. And I think they need to line Atkins up as kind of a Kelsey in a slot and then bring Savell Smalls in to block. he struggled in that game blocking, but he also has barely played so far this year. I was talking to Savell Smalls at Media Day before the year, and he was really excited for his opportunity. I can only imagine he's been pretty bummed at the position that he's been in. Now, he still needs to rise above, and it's another test, but and needs to play better when given his opportunity. But I do think that there needs to be more. Like Colorado, the play they hit Simeon Price on the touchdown was the same play that they finally found some sort of success with in the running game with Isaiah Gustive last year. You've got Smalls kind of in that slot. You motion him in line to the, as kind of like as you kind of pull him around, and then you open a hole. And Simeon Price hit it hard, looked great. First career touchdown for him. Getting to talk to him at Media Day too. He's just, I mean, a faith-based kid, great head on his shoulders. And then talking to him last week during the Tuesday press conference, talking about his portal journey and the fact that he was really considering being done with football to the point now where, I mean, he's got to be your lead back with what Mike has done over the last 2 weeks. I don't think that Mike has had great blocking in some of this stuff, but at the same time, I don't think they're playing Simeon enough, and I think he probably needs to play a little bit more and has earned that, quite frankly. If this is a true meritocracy and this team doesn't do anything well, you've got to find the guys who are making plays. And I'm going to get to that here coming up, especially defensively. I think there's a couple of guys who specifically need to play, but it's not like I think this is a major who the coaches are playing thing because the coaches know who the playmakers are. They've watched practice. They certainly have seen far more than we have. But there's some guys who probably aren't going to win a popularity contest that probably should be on the field a little bit more. And it's not a ton, but I think there are some here. And this is the stuff you learn the first 3 weeks of the year. That's why I've always said, you lose perspective as a coaching staff at the end of training camp because it's buffs on buffs for so long that you don't really know what you have. And Coach Prime has said multiple times that even in the spring and in the fall, he wishes he could have another team to really see what they have. So maybe that's been a struggle, which is why they've started the year a little slow. I'm not exactly sure. I think there are certain times when it's clear, and there are certain times when it's not. And based upon his rhetoric entering the year and all offseason, I don't think it was very clear. Maybe it was because of the situation he dealt with this summer with cancer and the fact that he wasn't here a ton. But the truth is, as a head coach, you can't really work with guys. I mean, it's you can be there and be around and be, the all-seeing eye over things. It's just like hands-on stuff's a little bit different. Anyway, so I go back to what do you do now? Because that was my question after the game. And normally I've got a pretty good feeling about, hey, here's my intuition based upon the game. This is what I would think about doing. I didn't the other night because I don't think it's incredibly clear. And I don't think Coach Prime can go wrong a ton in what he does because I just don't think there's that big of a difference. And I can see the arguments for playing all three guys. But here is where I would go back to Salter. Because of the gauntlet you have coming up, there's going to be some pretty good defenses that may have a lead on you, and you're going to need a quarterback who could make some plays, probably trailing a little bit. And I think that to avoid some of what you saw from Staub getting sacked in some really big moments on Friday night, Salter probably gets out of a couple of those. And maybe with some more time and more reps, he builds rhythm and learns. It's just never going to be what you want. And playing him this year is more out of necessity because Juju's not ready yet. Right? That's why. Like that's why you brought him in because you knew Juju was going to be 17. There's a lot to learn, and I do think Juju will have a very bright career wherever it is. If it's here, if it's somewhere else, I don't know, but I think it will be a very bright career. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, things change. Colorado could go and get a stud next year because they don't feel like they're ready to hand the keys to Julian yet. And I've said this once, I'll say it again. If Coach Prime doesn't think Julian Lewis is ready next year, politics be damned, he's getting another quarterback. That I can promise you, especially after the way this year has started and looks like it's going. So if you go back to Salter, the only way you do it is you run the offense completely built around him. We're talking about running the ball 30 times a game, no matter how much success you're having on first down. You've got to run it more, number one, and you've got to use the quick offense. And it's not just the quick game; it's the 1-2 read, and if it's not there, go. then you kind of tune him into, hey, we're gonna really you need to start to recognize when to tuck and run and always kind of be looking for those lanes if your first or second read isn't there. Because I'm not exactly sure he's the guy you're gonna want in the pocket, trying to work a lot of this stuff out. He does have a hitch in his throwing motion. He's got accuracy issues, stuff that you really don't want to see right now. And because of the allotted time that he had in the pocket at a lower level, I think some of that stuff was a little bit probably covered up. Obviously, I'd have to go through and comb his film, and I'm sure they did, and it looked good enough. But it's been off to start the year, and there's a reason that he lost a job. Okay, and there could also be stuff behind the scenes that I'm not aware of, and that none of us are, that could be going on because they do a good job keeping the lid on a lot of that. So if you go back to Salter, the only way you do it is if you fully commit to the RPO, okay, and the running game. If you're going to run the ball 30 times a game and you're not going to do it, don't go to him. Like just don't go to him. Just stick with Staub or put Julian in. But I think asking him to do what Shedeur did isn't going to go well. I don't think it was ever going to go well. Even though I believe the strength of the team is on the outside right now, they just don't have a quarterback that can consistently get those guys the ball. So as a result, I think you have to make things easier on your quarterbacks and on your offensive line by trying to run the ball a little bit more, even if you don't have a ton of success with it. Here's why. You keep your defense on the sideline if you can find a way to extend drives. And this defense isn't good enough to be out there all game long on center stage with the lights beating on them. They're just not. We watched that against Houston. I mean, they've got to capitalize on all opportunities the defense can give them and then hope momentum can find a way to sneak its way in and you can capitalize on that and wrangle it, right? Um, I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is a ball control offense this year probably will lead to the most success if you can find a way to do it. Now, you've got to find a way to run the ball effectively so you can open the play action game. And that's one thing I didn't think they did a great job of early so far with Salter is that's where he hit all of his big throws. Is it's all off of play action shots. And it doesn't really surprise me because they didn't do a ton of that with Shedeur. So the fact that they haven't really become great at it early, that shouldn't really come to a surprise. It come by surprise to many people, right? But with Kaidon, I think you have to find a way to open that up because the one thing we know about him is he can absolutely hurl the football. I mean, he could throw this thing 65, 70 yards in the air. He's a bigger arm than Shedeur had. Shedeur's 10 times the quarterback, but as far as the arm talent goes, I mean, he's got an arm. And Sincere Brown can run like the freaking wind. So like that needs to be a part of the game plan. It definitely does. I mean, he out threw Sincere Brown on the one deep shot they took, off that second turnover against Georgia Tech. So it's not like he's struggling for arm strength. You should probably try and dial that up because I think to be successful this year, you cannot start from a place where you're losing confidence in games early because I think this year it can turn on you because you don't have some of those guys that were really important for not only just chemistry and morale, but leadership and on-field communication. Cam Silman Craig, do they miss him like crazy? Right? I mean, we can go through the list of the players that embodied those roles and carried those roles, but that's probably a waste of time because here we are. So I've heard a lot of people ask me for a real conversation about the offensive coordinator. It's hard when you have to switch quarterbacks and prepare game plans for three different guys. That's number one. However, it just hasn't gotten enough better from the spring, and everybody was here around that position. They had, um, I mean, the majority of their offensive line was there, if not everybody. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody I'm missing there, or maybe. No, no, I don't think so. Anyway, regardless, the quarterbacks were there, and they've been there for a while now, and the progress that's been made since the spring. I was super worried about it in the spring, and it looks almost identical. Like they have barely gotten any better from what I can tell. I don't know the playbook. And the other part about this, I really like Pat Shurmur as a human being, so it's uncomfortable to criticize him, but that's our job as analysts. And I don't want anybody out there thinking this is a personal thing. It's just true that there's a lack of evolution to what they've done over 2.5 years, and him trying to call an offense that he's never really called and evolve it throughout the course of the year, it's evident right now to me. And I think to other people, I don't think that it won't work in some areas because the execution has been, to say it's been poor would probably be an understatement. There's been a lot there that they haven't hit, and that's not play calling. There's just approach to some of it, how layered some of it is, the ability to teach it. Like I think even though there's been a lot of new guys, I just don't think they're as far enough along as they could be. And the problem is that there have been some real opportunities for that narrative to change, and the players haven't made plays. So chicken or the egg is kind of how I see that, to be quite honest with you. Which is where I probably differ a little bit from some other fans who are asking for changes. Change for change's sake this year doesn't make much sense because I just don't think it's going to be a successful enough year where an on-staff firing is going to make a difference. Because it's not like I think Pat Shermer is detrimental to the culture. I think Sean Lewis and Shedeur didn't get along, and I think that got a little testy in general behind the scenes because I think he made it clear that he wasn't happy, and he was definitely leaking stuff along the way, and they knew about that. So that got weird. Coach Prime should have probably just up and fired him, quite frankly, altogether. Um, but I think he was trying to do him a favor by not doing that because he deserves another opportunity, and sure as hell he got one the next year. So, never say that Coach Prime does the wrong thing by his staff because I know that's really important to him as well. Um, but who are you going to put there? Brett Barnoloni? Coach Prime knows what he has in Brett Barnoloni. He knows. He's been with him plenty. Jason Phillips? I doubt it. I think you need Jason Phillips in the wide receiver room right now, especially the way they're playing. I think he really needs to be focused there. I think that would be taking him away from something that he really needs to be dialed in to. Now, again, who knows what happens? I think it's way too early for those discussions because I don't think you're going to solve anything. It's still going to be the same offense with guys who are less in rhythm calling plays. And Pat Shermer hasn't had an opportunity this year long enough with one guy to really evaluate it because I think there's been plenty of times when his guys have also let him down. So a lot of you, I understand, has it been great? No. Does it need to get better? Yes. But I just don't know what you solve by doing that right now, at all, or quite frankly, mid-season. And my personal feelings for him aside, like if I thought there was somebody better in the building and people are like, oh, Byron Leftwich, I don't even think Byron Leftwich is on staff. I haven't seen him in like a week. That was never made official. We don't know that to be the case. So I don't know. Okay. I mean, maybe if he's going to hire him mid-year as the OC. Maybe I don't know. I mean, Coach Prime will do anything to make the team better. I know that, but I don't think that's where he's going to go. Um, let's see. So going to Salter, it's a 1 and 2 read and go play action, get the run option and 12 personnel. You probably won't have like a big intermediate passing game, but I think the drags, the overs, kind of some of that stuff will be there. And I think getting Zach Adkins like 5 touches a game over the middle of the field as a matchup nightmare can help keep you in third and short. Now I know Atkins has had a couple of drops. It's going to happen. He's going to keep growing. That's not a guy you put on the shelf if he has a couple of problems. You need to keep playing him because I think you've got him for this year and next year he could be a really good player for you. Next year he could be a really nice player for you. That's a guy that you need to continue to invest in, but play to his strengths. Is he ever going to be a great inline blocker? No. Does he need to get better? Yes. So he needs to do some of it, but where are his strengths? He's a converted receiver. Use him in the slot. Like that's something that I think this team has to tap into. He was making plays all over the field in training camp, and they've gone away from him. I don't understand. The other thing with him, I would take him off kickoff coverage. Why would you have your starting tight end who plays on the field have to run a bunch on that play? I don't like that. I mean, there's plenty of other guys that can do that, I feel like. And, I just think he needs to focus. That's just my opinion based upon how important he could be to your offense. That's that. I would also play Quentin Gibson a little bit more. Like I think you're gonna need to use this as a development year because you're gonna have to rely on some of these younger guys to be dudes next year. You got to start getting some of these younger guys involved a little bit more than they are. I do. And if you're gonna go with the quick game, I'd probably use Omarion Miller more in the slot than the outside because I think Caden's struggling to throw outside the numbers. So it would really just be all about, you know, putting your players in a position to actually receive the football realistically. And with the fact that just hasn't demonstrated it yet, until we see that, you've got to be more intentional about where you're using your personnel. Problem there is it can take some time to get things set up, and it's already slow procedurally with Caden. So you've got to find a way to light a fire under these guys and get them to pick this stuff up faster. It's just not getting picked up fast enough, which is where I think a lot of the frustration has led it stems from. Behind the scenes is my speculation. I don't know if that's true. It's just my speculation. Let's see. Now here's the thing. We talked about the gauntlet of the 4 game stretch you have coming up with BYU, with TCU, Iowa State, and Utah. I think Colorado's going 0-4 in those games, no matter what they do. I mean, we could maybe they get lucky, and maybe Salter, if you go with the quick premeditated offense, if you go with some of that stuff, if you find a way to get him in a rhythm where he's starting to feel a little bit more confident, the operation starts to feel a little bit better, you start to really run the football because that's one area that we just haven't seen them fully try yet, even if they didn't have success, which again, I didn't really blame them for not running the football much against Houston. Houston's defensive line was having a really good game. And I think that Houston defense is better than a lot of CU fans think it is. I think they're gonna have a pretty solid unit. They've got a pretty damn good defensive coach down there. So you know he's going to get that thing rocking. And they got some good talent. I mean, they got some big dudes who made a lot of plays. They certainly pushed CU's offensive line around. Like those guys may be big, they're just not getting any push, and it's frustrating. Like I can only imagine it's frustrating considering the amount of money that they gave those kids this offseason behind the scenes. And maybe it's a situation where, going to Gunnar White this year. I don't know. I mean, I like Gunnar White a lot, but that's a guy who's never done fully that job before. Maybe you should have went out and figured out, a more veteran guy. I don't know. I mean, these are things that I would be thinking about if I were Coach Prime. Again, he's not going to second guess himself and he's going to ride with his guys. And I love the fact that he gives young coaches an opportunity because so many people don't do that. I really do appreciate that. I don't know. I'm throwing things out there right now because this is a drawing board week where, based upon his reaction after the game, they really need to look internally. Because again, based upon his rhetoric, like talking about the fact that this was going to be a better team than last year, I never understood. And if he truly believed that, he must feel horrible right now. Like you must feel awful right now because they're so far away from being in that conversation that like that it's just got to feel shitty. It just does. So I believe that they're going to lose those 4 games. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they can surprise us all. I do believe that's what happens. And the morale and the chemistry coming off of that because you don't have next year to look forward to like you did in 2023. You don't have Shedeur and Travis still there. Like I think it's going to be harder to keep this group together if they go on that kind of a losing streak. It's going to be huge this week to build this team's confidence back up. Like you've got to, if you can start to put points on Wyoming, do it. That's what I would say. Like I respect, wanting to kind of be classy. And I heard Wyoming's coach, who seems like a really great guy, and I think they've always had a gritty program up there. And it's not going to be easy to put a bunch of points on them, but I think the point remains the same that if you get an opportunity, just the repetitions of getting your guys in the end zone, I think is huge, and I would do it. Um, there's a couple other things personnel wise offensively I'd try. Like I'd try Harge out of the backfield as more of a receiver in that regard because I think they're doing a lot with throwing to those guys. And if you're going to do that, get Draylon back there, get Harge back there. I mean, I know that I saw Cam Michael doing a bunch of backpedaling, but he was a heck of a offensive player in high school. And I just look at him and go, well, you need guys who can make plays right now, and there really haven't been many that have stepped up. So maybe, when he gets healthy, give him an opportunity. It's something he knows how to do, not something he doesn't. Like I had a couple of conversations with people around the program. They're like, they don't need another running back. They don't have a big body like that could hit the hole and fly. Like Simeon Price looked good, but Cam Michael could bring a whole different element to it if you do what's natural for him. So you never know. My point is like, is he really going to play defensively? I mean, maybe because they're in a rough spot back there and we haven't gotten the defense yet, but like if this team's 2-6 going into the Arizona game, where you've got four left, then what? I think you still want to keep Juju's red shirt if you can. Maybe he ends up having 5 years of eligibility, but I think you probably still want to do that. Maybe you give Staub the Arizona game. Who the hell knows what it looks like by then? I'm just painting a hypothetical because this is something that I'm thinking about right now that you, based upon the way the season is going, one way or another, should probably give Juju the last 3 games of the year. I mean, unless they're right there for making a bowl, then the conversation changes. But if they're 2-6 in the Arizona game, what about coming out of the Arizona game? If they're 3-6 with three left to play, and you're 3-6 with Kaidon Salter at that stage, like, is it worth it to go for the six with Caden? Maybe, and maybe it is. Maybe it is. And I'm not saying that it's not, and it would be a cool rally story, but I struggle to see how you go 0-4 and then all of a sudden you have some late season resurgence. Maybe that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just find it hard to believe it's going to be with the same guy at quarterback, especially when you have so many different young men from different places that don't have those bonds to fall back on in many regards. I think it could splinter. But my point is, like, let's say you win Arizona. Let's say you don't beat Arizona. It's 2-7. If you're 3-6 or you're 2-7, does it change your approach? If you're 2-7 with three left, you don't really have a chance to make a bowl, obviously. So anyway, that's where I'd go right now. I'd go back to Caden. I don't think Ryan played well enough in the second half at all to trust him. There were some moments where he just really didn't meet the moment. And when you needed him to be the guy who could kind of take charge, he did it. He did it in a scrappy way to get them into the game. It was just I don't know that it's what gives you the best chance to succeed. Now, if Caden's not tapped in, tuned in, turned on to the program, then you don't even bother, right? But from what I saw on the sideline, he was right next to Ryan a lot of the time, and Juju was there, and I think those guys are working hard for each other. I don't think there's any like bad blood in the quarterback room. I don't know behind the scenes. If there was, you couldn't really tell. I'll just put it that way. I mean, all three of those young men are I don't think they're bad people or spiteful. I mean, I'm sure everybody wants to play and they're all competitors, but let's just see how it goes this week. I mean, there's a reason that Coach Prime went away from it. Does he feel like that reason still exists and is still important enough to stay away from it? Or do you feel like as a coach, you've got to find a way to put your team the best chance to have some success? And even if it's not stylistically what you want to do, Coach Prime doesn't want to go out there, run the ball 40 times a game. That's not an exciting brand of football to watch. And it can get a little frustrating because I don't think they have the offensive line to really road grade you at all, like at all. So I get not wanting to do that. And they have tons of talent outside. Like these receivers they have are good. They haven't been, I wouldn't say that it's been a great start to this year, which is why Quanell Farrakhan for me is starting to get more opportunities if I'm them. I know he had one against Delaware, but I'd start working him in. He made big play after big play in camp from what I saw. So again, Gibson's the same guy. Like these are guys you're going to have to rely on, coming down the line. And you're going to want to have, if you're going to go through the fire right now, like go through the fire with the guys who will get their ass kicked and learn from it. And that's a decision that will come later. I don't think they're there yet personally. But as far as rotating some of those guys in, I think it's important. Like Quentin Gibson, as much as I love Isaiah Harge and think he's a great young man and think he can do some things with the ball in his hands, would I play Quentin Gibson in the slot over him? Probably right now. And I'd probably use him a little bit as an option out of the backfield. Why not have Price and Simeon Price and Isaiah Harge in the backfield? Why are you going Micah and Simeon so it looks the same? I don't know. I mean, I just think that Isaiah can do some of those things enough to put it on tape where teams have to prepare for it, right? If you're going to do some of that stuff, and it may give you more versatility to have one of those guys back there. I just think you need to get a little bit more creative in your usage and your personnel, while at the same time trying to take the path of least resistance. But what it really is about putting your athletes in a good spot to do something with it, which I know they're trying to do, and I know they have done. There's been some bad execution. So a lot of people are throwing a lot of blame on the coaching staff. I don't think I think personally, I believe it's more talent than I believe it's coaching, but I don't think some of the coaching is helping. And as to be expected, you've got to continue to grow throughout the year. Unfortunately, the foundation that they started with this year is just well below anywhere that's going to allow them to get to their expectations. Andre Roy came in for Larry Johnson. I think he did well. I'd probably go back to him, but it wasn't like I wouldn't call it a great performance, but I think he was more consistent on a down to down basis than Larry Johnson. We'll see if it continues. I'm not sure. There's also some other linemen there that you can try. And I think there are some opportunities where maybe a rotation lights a fire under some of those guys. So they have to be a little bit more competitive. You want to build a rhythm, you want to build routine. I don't know. It's something that I would think about, no question about it. I think Hakeem Williams also needs to touch the ball more. He's a freak athlete, and he's a really smart young man from after meeting him. And obviously, I know people are going to remember the Travis comment, but kids will be kids. We have to remember that too. But I'd like to see him with the ball in his hands a little bit more. I mean, there's a reason why he was a five-star, right? He's a freakish athlete. Let's see. Let's see. So that's offensively, which I actually think, again, I don't think the line is great. Um, Quarterback's obviously an issue here, quite frankly. And you just really, I think whoever starts against Wyoming, you've got to have the plan to start that 4 week stretch. Like he's got to get the next 5 games. If it's Ryan, if it's Caden, I just wouldn't. You need some guy to tune up. Whoever you're going to tune up, this is the tune up game. Excuse me. And then your next 4 weeks, it's your test, and you just have to keep building with them. I don't think switching it up a lot, unless there are circumstances that occur that are unforeseen, would be wise right now. Um, I just think you got to find a way to build some sort of cohesion and consistency and allow these guys an opportunity to build a rhythm, which you can't really treat the season like the preseason unless you absolutely have to. And I think there has been a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. It's just messy because Salter isn't exactly the guy that you recruited him to be. So you've got to figure out whether or not you're okay with trying to let him be who he is and see what you can accomplish with that, or would you rather stick with guys who you think you could be here next year? That's the question, because if JuJu goes in, they probably get their ass kicked a couple of times, but he learns a lot and he makes a lot of mistakes this year, and at least he gets them out of the way this year, which is why I think for those last 3 games, like come hell or high water, I think you go to him. If it were me, unless Caden comes in and leads some sort of resurgence, which I put it like a 10%, 15% chance based upon what we've seen now. It doesn't mean that things can't get better, but they're playing some really good competition here coming up, and it's just going to be hard. So I would probably just plan right now for those final 3 because you already used one for JuJu, unless you just end up burning it. But if you burn a whole year of eligibility for him, it better be for a good reason, because if Coach Prime is going to stay here for the majority or entirety of Juju's career, like you're going to want as much time with that young man to work him, because clearly, at the outset, like, yeah, okay, he's really talented, but he's got a lot to work on, and he's younger and he's smaller, and like there's a great arm right there. But if you could offer me 5 years of him compared to 4, I would sign for 5 right now because I think he's going to need him. So either way, that's my opinion there on how the season goes, because I just don't think it's going to go well. And here's why: defense a mess. Defense is a mess. It is. I don't understand Brandon Davis Swain playing right now, other than for development. If that's why, I get it. But he's missing a lot of plays and he's getting pushed around a lot. I don't believe he's ready. And there's such a senior laden group there that I think there's other guys that deserve an opportunity for those snaps more than he does. I'd probably still rotate him in because you want to get a guy like that more and more repetitions, but they're having such a hard time with physicality right now. I don't think it sends a good message to reward guys who it's clear on tape are getting their asses kicked. And I think in the defensive line room, again, I'm a little surprised that those guys have stuck with him as much as they have. Quite frankly, there's clearly something they see that I don't see, but it doesn't mean that I think that Brandon can't be a good player and that I don't like him, that he's not, a fun young man to be around. But I think there's probably better options. Tavian Coleman played really well against Houston for the most part, comparatively to how some of these other guys have been playing. He probably deserves more opportunities. I believe Otis was hurt. Barnes was up. He's been up and down. He hasn't had as strong a start to the year as I expected. He's got to be better. If you want to anchor that defensive line, they need you more. They need you more. And they really miss Chidozie Wonkwo right now, badly, and Shane Cokes, because those are two guys that are hard to move. For example, I went back and watched a 4th and 1 against Cincinnati where they stopped them at the end of the first half to set up Travis Hunter's second touchdown of the first half. And it was BJ Green, Levante Pentley, Chidozie Wonkwo, Amari was on the line, but then you had Nakai Hill Green and you had Cam, flooding the box. And then the reason I watched it is because I watched the way that these guys on Friday night tried to stop Houston on a 4th and 1, and Reggie Hughes and Tawfiq Bayard were talking to each other and weren't paying attention, so they got to the play late after Wigman already converted him. And then Finiseth was looking at the sideline. And Wigman did this thing where he kind of walked up to the line trying to change the call and fooled them. But why Robert Livingston isn't having why is Ben Finiseth paying 25 yards off the line, and this is a Livingston thing, why is he 25 yards off the line on a 4th and 1? They've got to sell out a little bit more to make some more plays this year because they're just not as talented, and they're not going to make as many plays. I really like Robert Livingston, and I don't think this is I would have expected a better performance all around too, and I think it was probably expected by him as well, based upon the returners that they had. And it's definitely been disappointing. And I thought that he started to kind of turn the tide in the second half against Houston because they really started bringing a lot more pressures and it really affected Connor Wigman. Because I do think there's some good pass rushers on this team. I do. And I think there is talent on that defense. There's no doubt there's talent, but there's some giant holes that I don't think we thought would be this glaring. It was a possibility. And Brian and I brought it up, specifically. I've been pounding the running back, linebacker, tight end thing and safety thing since spring ball, and it's a huge issue right now. Huge issue. Linebacker's a mess. Linebacker's just a mess. I don't know what they're gonna do, and I don't think it's a problem that you can solve this year. Sean Myers, quite frankly, has to be the closest thing they have to an every down backer because he has the best instincts. He does the best job of filling gaps. It's not great, but he's coming from North Alabama. Like, he wasn't like a born P4 guy. His speed to the edges isn't great. They have fallen in love a little bit with the potential and the athleticism of a guy like Martavius French and Reggie Hughes. Both those guys are way too far along in their careers to be making the same mistakes that they're making over and over and over again. I like Reggie Hughes, a person. He's a wicked athlete, but he can't tackle anybody. And Martavius French misses way too many tackles. And both these guys can't get off a block, and both these guys don't fill the right gaps. Watching linebacker play on this team is harder than anything else, for me, at least. So Jeremiah Brown gets in, like he's missing plays. There's a reason why they haven't played him up until this point, and the reason that he's here is because they didn't really bring, a ton of other guys in to compete, and he had an opportunity, and I just don't think against like power four teams he's that guy, but maybe with more snaps and more reps. Here's the good news for him is he's going to continue to get them because they don't have a damn choice. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, they got to play everybody because everybody's missing. Everybody's making awful plays. Until those guys start to play better, this defense will be exactly what it is right now. Period. Um, and I don't know that they will get much better. But what I do know is they need to stop rotating as much defensively. The guys who are making plays got to stay on the field more. I think now through 3 games, we get it. But you needed those 3 games specifically with this group to see some of these guys in live fire because a lot of these guys didn't have a ton of experience. Some did from lower schools and lower levels, but smaller schools, lower levels. But a guy like a John Slaughter, like they rotated him a little bit in against Delaware and it worked. It did not really work the other night. The kid can't make a tackle. It's a problem. I mean, none of this is arguably one of the worst tackling teams I've ever seen. It's so bad. And it's one thing where it's like, hey, that's game three. I expect this to be a little bit better by now. It's not. It makes me worried about the talent that they have here and the physicality that they have here. And this is why I think they're going 0-4 in that stretch. And this is why I think they're going to have a really rough year because the physicality across the board is just not where it needs to be in year three of the program. And they've spent a lot of effort trying to get it there, and it's just not. And I think right now there's a bad talent problem. I don't know if Mantrez Walker is a freshman who came in, from a really competitive place. Like he went to high school in Buford. Like maybe he's a guy at the end of the year you just throw in and try and see if he can do something. I mean, obviously I'm not a practice. I don't know. From a physicality standpoint, typically you need a year or two, especially at the inside linebacker position, to really grow into that if you're not one of the top recruited guys. But he was a very productive high school player. Maybe Kaidon Salter, I think he's been banged up a little bit. Maybe he eventually gets some opportunities. What I know right now is it's not good enough at all. Like it's awful right now. It's really bad. So I think it's going to be their undoing personally. That between that and safety, which is also a huge problem, because I expected more from Carter the first couple of games. I really like Carter. I thought he was going to be a really big leader on this team. He's missing a lot of plays, and I think he got a little bit banged up at halftime. You never want to have to play Ben. If you were going to play Ben, you should have kept Trevor Woods at safety, like I said the entire time. I love Ben too, but that was ridiculous. I mean, just that would be so helpful right now. I can't even explain it. I mean, it's ridiculous. Um, anyway. I know a lot of you don't understand how good Trevor was as a safety, and I know there were some moments there, but goddamn, that kid made plays. Like, and this team has nobody that made plays right now. No, nobody's making plays. Tawfiq Bayard finally got in there, and Tawfiq now looks like himself. And I heard from well off today, Coach Prime said, "We know you got hurt, you missed a little bit of time, then you came back, you went to scout week, you scout team, you had yourself a pity party, and now look at you." Like, Tawfiq Bayard could be a guy that really is somebody who could find a way to contribute, but there's just not enough guys. And defensively, when you don't trust your guy to your right and you don't trust your other guy to your left, like it's you're gonna have breakdowns. You're gonna have breakdowns. But I think it's really important because I think Tawfiq Bayard can be a star at the University of Colorado. I don't know if he's big enough to play at some other schools, but he's a beast here, and can be if he continues on this trajectory. Makari Vickers played. He's got some speed to him. He got burned on the one on the double move from Johnson, who I think Johnson's actually a pretty good player. Their receiver down there, Steven Johnson. RJ Johnson played a little bit. Teion Parks has been hurt. Tyreek Davis has pretty much been relegated to just nickelback play. There's a problem there for sure. They're just not great, and they haven't played a lot, and they need to learn a ton. They never replaced Colton Hood, and it's clear every single week so far that Colton Hood. I mean, Delaware threw for 300 yards on him. I mean, Colton Hood is getting a ton of opportunities because of injuries that Tennessee is playing. They didn't replace him. We don't have to beat a dead horse, but they just didn't replace him, and it shows. Um, and the other part is Preston Hodges had a very slow start to the year. Preston, I thought, was arguably you could make the point that getting him back because of the fifth year of eligibility rule, Diego Pavia, shout out, who, by the way, shout out on the big win over South Carolina from Vanderbilt. Hodge has not been good enough. And as a guy, I'll say this, I think Colorado's got some guys with L's and D's on the jersey that don't deserve them right now. And I'd probably be taking some of those off, quite frankly, until they've earned them again. Coach Prime's big about that, even if it is symbolic. Is it going to make a huge difference? I don't know, but it probably light some of these guys up. There just needs to be a kick in the ass, a proverbial one for a lot of these guys. But the problem is that there's a talent issue and it's significant. Like there's a lot of younger guys who are going to see some playing time or inexperienced guys, but and even some of these lower level guys, it's a talent issue, is what it is. And through three games defensively, I think it's clear. And what's also clear is that the defensive line, there's a couple things that need to happen. Alexander McPherson's going to be a guy who eventually has a D on the jersey because he's a stud. I mean, he is exactly what you want in a defensive end. Like he is like I think of him the way he's built as like a baby Max Crosby. Okay. That's the type of potential I think he could have if he just attacks the game. He's a star. London Merritt is strong as an ox too. There was a play where he absolutely threw aside their left tackle. Keaton Wade has been good. I think Keaton Wade and Arden Walker need to be um, a lot more aggressive on third downs in some of those situations, but they don't play a lot in third down because there's a lot of times when they're their first and second down guys. Arden has not been making a ton of plays in the running game. I mean, he's hit or miss, and I thought he was going to have a really big year. It's off to a slow start. Um, that's a rotation that I would consider tweaking a little bit. And I would just set the standard that it's like, guys, we're looking for people to make plays. If you make plays, you will play. And that's got to start happening a little bit more than just having earned it in camp and over the summer because what's that matter if you're not doing it on Saturdays? And I think you have a little bit of that going on, but it's not a ton. I just think a little bit of it. And the other thing that Preston Hodge brought up that was interesting is he said, "Look, we're playing a lot of man coverage. You know, there's a lot of guys that don't have a ton of experience that are being asked to cover in man, and maybe he was saying that he felt like it was a problem, saying it without saying it. Now, Coach Prime is Coach Prime. He's going to run a lot of man, but maybe you try and run some more zone because you just don't have that personnel that can really run that stuff this year. You've got some of it, but Travis ain't out there right now. He can't take away half the field. And you had, turns out, two, three really good corners playing with him, right? Not that we didn't know that, but you look at what Colton Hood is doing at Tennessee and what it looks like without him here. Preston's obviously had a slow start, but you didn't really replace that other two other starting corners, and I think it shows right now. They tried to with some younger guys, but again, stars cost, and whether or not it's a resources thing or an evaluation thing, or maybe trying to develop some underclassmen for the future, they're not ready, and it's a problem. Um, it's a problem, and they'll get better with time. That's kind of how those things go, unless things slide. I've seen a lot of bad CU teams just never get better. Some guys individually, but again, things splinter. It becomes more about the individual, and you see who really wants it, who doesn't. Um, I think just on both sides of the football, you need to take more calculated risks and gamble a little bit earlier and sell out sometimes. If you get beat, then you get beat. But you've got to outcoach teams, and there's a little bit too much dysfunction going on right now in general to, I think, get where you want to go on the field. And I think a lot of it is player based. But again, it falls on coaches. So those are my thoughts. It's tricky. It's tricky. I'm looking forward to watching them get a confidence boost against Wyoming, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Coach Prime does at quarterback. I told you what I would do, because I think you're going to have to. What does he decide to do? And again, like I'm not, raking him over the coals because I thought he made a bad decision going to Staub. I agreed with it, and I saw the logic behind it, but I also saw how Staub played, and it's interesting because I didn't think Staub played just awful. I thought there's a lot of other factors. Offensive line was just not good. It was just not good. However, um, there was a lot of stuff that he missed. And Coach Prime after the game, and obviously he was on the headset. He knows what was called. He knows what plays didn't get executed. He was pretty adamant in that stop play bad. That was what he said. Bad. I saw what you saw, which again I didn't see it as that disqualifying for their performance only because I didn't think it would make a big difference if it was Kaidon or Ryan. But moving forward, these next 5 games, I think it's proven now. Look, I mean, even if it's not going to win you a bunch of games, there's a lot of really good teams. Like going to Utah with Ryan Staub this year looks not great. And it doesn't look great with Kaidon Salter either. But I just think that you have an opportunity to make games more competitive. And if you can just this year, if you can just keep yourself in, find a way, second and manageable, third and short, you can give yourself an opportunity to compete in the football game in the fourth quarter. You'll have done your job week in and week out. I think that's all you can expect right now. And that's what I'd say. I'd be like, we got to find a way. As a coaching staff, here's what we need. Okay. We've got to find a way to be competitive and hang around until the fourth and give ourselves an opportunity in the fourth. Hopefully by then we'll have built the confidence because there are better teams undoubtedly than you that you come up against here, and it's very soon. Anyway, that's my takeaway. Those are my thoughts right now. Certainly things change and things evolve, and look, this is if this were easy, everybody would do it and everybody would be good at it. But it ain't easy. It ain't. I appreciate you for tuning in. I'm not talking about what I'm doing. I meant the college football thing. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of you jokers out there that are doing this, but you're not doing it like me who say like and subscribe and hype. And I'll talk to you later.